Well, that should be more than enough prep work before we go off to deal with Leviathan. Time to go see how he compares with his wife. Considering she had the ability to heal herself and potentially keep the fight going indefinitely, I'm pretty sure she has the advantage in terms of mechanics that would really drive us crazy. Still, we have absolutely had to challenge her before we were allowed to challenge him. That's generally a good sign that he was meant to come across as more difficult between the two. Oh, I don't know. It feels like strength has gotten us pretty far, and we certainly needed more than mindless strength to have any chance against your wife. I suppose he wasn't really paying close attention to how we beat her, though, despite standing literally right next to her. Didn't even get a chance to do anything and he gets a party-affecting shot off. That's kind of annoying. Thankfully, Rose's here to do a full party heal, and has plenty of MP to do so quite a few times. And since we don't have to worry about Leviathan having anything like Reflect, we don't need to use a summon to get around such a barrier, and since he isn't going to be healing himself, we don't need to cast Reflect on him ourselves. Riddy and Edge can just keep on electrocuting him until the oversized eel is cooked, or until they run out of MP. The only real question is, can we keep it up long enough for him to go down before we do? That's certainly a question we're used to asking in most boss fights. Part of me feels like we didn't need to use our absolute strongest healing spell there. The other doesn't want to take any risks, since it's not like we have any on-screen timer to show how often he's going to use that deluge attack against us. I suppose if I pay close enough attention to that glowing aura, we might have a guess for how often he's going to do that attack. But that feels like the sort of thing that I'd need multiple shots from that spell to figure out, and we'll hopefully finish it off before I can. Right, so Edge is done shooting lightning at the bastard. That didn't take long for him to run out of ammo. Bit annoying, but then it's not like we ever expected him to be a magical powerhouse of some kind. That's a bit too close for comfort for Rydia there. And just like that, she's out of danger. Is it just me, or do Edge's blades seem to be doing more damage than us electrocuting the enemy that is explicitly weak to lightning? May as well cast Protect, since it's not like there's any emergency healing that Rosa needs to do right now. Not that I have any clue how much that's going to cut the damage that Leviathan has been causing. And it's not like it's going to cut the damage from his spells. Yeah, really not getting the sense that Protect is actually doing anything for us here. We took just as much damage as we would have if we didn't have it on. Oops! Didn't mean to have Rydia use her whip on Leviathan. Bit of a wasted turn on her part. Yeah, looks like we're going to repeat our pattern against his pattern until one side loses. I certainly don't see anything that would prompt me to alter my tactics in any way. I just wish I knew how much more of this he can take. Seems Cecile is taking the majority of the damage at the moment. It's a good thing he can take quite a beating, and that it doesn't take long for Rosa to heal him. I kinda wish the battle area had more visible water, considering we're fighting a water-centric boss here. I kinda wonder why I didn't notice we were still fighting in the lava tile set while we were fighting Azura just before him. And that does it. Leviathan is beaten. I'm sorry, but he definitely felt like a pushover considering the amount of crap we had to go through to beat Azura just before him. Really, it felt like a foregone conclusion. Now that we're done with that fight, there's no reason to stick around the Fey March any longer. Time to pack it in and get moving back to the overworld. We need to see Yang's wife and tell her that her husband is currently comatose and being watched over by a bunch of underground fairy spirits in an acid cave. Not that the game itself tells us that we need to do that for something involving the side quest. That's just something you'd know either by playing this game multiple times or by just looking at an online guide. I would have preferred if the game told us what we need to do in a way that felt natural, but well. Work with the hand you've been dealt, not with the one you wish you had. It might be a bit of a waste of money to rest in this expensive inn again, but then we've reached the point in the game where we really don't have to worry about buying fresh equipment. We've already bought the best gear that money can pay for in this world. Any further upgrades are going to be whatever we happen to find in later dungeons. I suppose I like the fact that the village itself is in the background for this upper level. That's a nice visual effect, even if it kind of messes with your sense of scale. And yeah, that's all for the Fey March. Really wish the game did more with the place, considering it's where Rydia grew up when she separated from the rest of the party. But again, the storytelling in this game doesn't really give a damn about character writing. Completely understandable, since this is the absolute first game of the franchise to have defined characters, and it's not like there were other games out there that did much character-related stuff at the time, but Okay, we've kind of found our previous airship here. Again, it kind of feels weird that this game gives us at least 3 separate airships over the course of the plot. The only gimmick with the red one is that it has a drill, which we only ever need to use once, otherwise it's just another airship. The green one has gained the ability to grab and carry the hovercraft, which is a bit more useful, but again feels like such a narrow gimmick and isn't used that often. Seriously, what would it have harmed if the game designers had put the functionality of the Enterprise and the Falcon into the same airship in this game? I get why the airship that can transition to the moon is special. The ones for use in the atmosphere are wooden constructs with helicopter blades spinning to keep them afloat. Wood might be a good way to stay afloat if you're dropping in the ocean unexpectedly. Not that the game ever does that clever thing of the airships being able to sail conventionally when the helicopter blades aren't working, but I do not think that wood would be all that good at maintaining atmosphere or pressure once you leave the planet's surface. It would also be a horrifically bad idea if you wanted to re-enter the atmosphere, since that tends to make your ship hot, and wood has this frustrating tendency to burn. Anyway, time to go to another location that the game doesn't really give you an in-universe reason to go to. That seems to be a running theme with the side quests in this game. Well, I hope this random rat tail is good enough for you. And with that ore, we can go to a very special blacksmith underground to have a special sword forged for Cecile. Kind of a bit convoluted, but I suppose I've seen worse, but it really doesn't feel like the side quests in this game are generally things you would know to do in your first playthrough unless you're looking at a guide. And in my opinion, that is kind of some bad quest design. Though with how old this game is, maybe it's not fair to compare how it handles quests with how modern games do. Final Fantasy IV was the foundation that a number of games and franchises took inspiration from. It took some of the first steps in making video game narratives that were more than a bare-bones, basic save-the-world plot. In fact, when I think about it, it's kind of funny that Final Fantasy IV in some ways feels like a better, more comprehensive plot than what Pokemon would get until I think around the Sinnoh region, the black and white games. I forget off the top of my head what number generation that was, but I'm kind of gonna guess it was either 4 or 5 since I dropped out at around 3. It's just a weird thing with that series. And in terms of Let's Plays, I've kind of got an indefinite hiatus going on during my playthrough of the second generation of Pokemon, so everything past Hoenn is in some ways fresh to me, or will be when I finally get around to them. Well, lads, hope you're ready to make a sword, because we found the ultra-rare material that your master has been thinking about. Well, that certainly woke him up, and the sword we first gained when we became a paladin, the one that has the prophecy written on it, will now become Excalibur. It's kind of interesting that, as far as I know, every Final Fantasy game has an Excalibur sword somewhere in it. The only exception that I can think of off the top of my head is Final Fantasy VIII, but then the whole weapon forging process kind of felt pretty weird to me, especially with how the junction system worked. One of many things that I would certainly hope a remake would help fix in a way that would make the overall experience less of a pain in the ass to go through. Huh, certainly didn't take him long to make such a legendary weapon. Huh. As much as I appreciate the massive leap in damage we can do, I'm kind of surprised that it'll drop our defense by a little bit. Ah, well, I suppose that's what the shield and armor are for. Anyway, let's get back into the air and see what else we can do in this clip. Yeah, sooner or later we will get back to Fabul and talk to Yang's wife, but there are other things, and it's not like we're in any hurry. And it's not like the game is outright telling us to do any of this stuff. Huh. Guess I'm going to save again before making the trip to Fabul. Makes sense. I'd rather not have to redo the things we just accomplished if something goes wrong, even if they weren't that difficult to do. Not that I can think of anything in particular that might go wrong when some of the things I'm thinking of. I can't imagine too much trouble, but Oh yeah, one of our next stops, the Coast of the King of Baron, is waiting for us after we went through the Feymarch. Definitely forgot about that for a bit. It's not like this game has any kind of journal to keep track of what needs to be done at any given time. I don't think that will be invented for several console generations. In fact, I don't think role-player games bothered to try to remind the player what's going on until around the PlayStation 2 or 3 era. And we haven't even made it to the PlayStation 1 era of this series. Yeah, I almost forgot to do this at all, but thankfully the guide I was reading at the time kept it in mind better than I did. Considering the king was apparently a foster parent for Cecile, I kind of wish that his relationship with said character had any kind of emotion whatsoever here. Nope. It's just a relationship between leader and subordinate at best. The guy just wasn't given any actual personality to bounce off of Cecile. Not that Cecile seems to have all that much personality around here either, but at least he has more than previous Final Fantasy protagonists. Anyway, apparently killing the bastard that killed him isn't enough to gain his respect for some reason. Excuse me for finding that a bit stupid and forced. But considering the things we had to do in the main plot, that's not actually all that out of place. I'm pretty sure we're meant to use slow, so he doesn't have as much of a chance to use an especially devastating attack against us, but considering the sheer amount of damage we can cause, I don't really see much need to slow him down at all. Maybe I'm just being arrogant as hell. I suppose we'll see if I have to go through this fight more than once. Okay, so Leviathan does quite a bit of damage to Odin. And we'd only really be allowed to take on Odin if we went to the Feymarch, where, of course, we will want to see Leviathan at some point. Is anyone else getting the feeling this was meant to be one-sided in our favor? And here's the second tsunami. Place your bets. Will he survive it? Okay, so he couldn't survive that long. I didn't even bother trying to slow him down, and the guy with that one-hit kill that would have taken out our entire party all at once never got a chance to pull it off. Seriously, Odin felt like the easiest of the summons for us to earn the respect of. Why? Just why is it that of the three we had to battle against, the first one felt like the hardest, and the third one felt like the easiest? Isn't it more preferable that the first one is the easiest and the last in line is the toughest? And I suppose I can't really complain all that much about the lack of meaningful dialogue between Cecile and the king. It's not like Rydia felt like she had any actual connection with Azura or Leviathan, despite the fact that they essentially raised her. They just happen to know her name after she lived in their isolated hidden kingdom for an unspecified amount of time. Right, free rest, and maybe now it's finally time to go to Yang's wife. We've certainly kept the woman waiting longer than I thought we would, but I suppose waiting is the wrong word to use there. It's not like she knows we're coming to visit her after all. Hell, it's not like any of our characters ever suggested going to her. So if you don't already know this part of the side quest involving Yang in the underground, it would be very easy to miss. Certainly plenty of saves in this one clip, isn't there? I somehow doubt I'm gonna be able to slip in another recording session after the fourth one, though. About 26 and a half minutes certainly feels like a healthy length for this clip. And there's Fabul. Really wish that the multiple kingdoms in this world felt like they were actually trying to prevent all hell from breaking loose. But the moment Fabul lost the crystal, it stopped being important to the story at all. We never got any sense that they're trying to replenish their numbers or use what few monks they have left to fight against Golbez's fortresses anywhere else on the planet. Hell, when we land there, the only thing that's gonna change is the dialogue for Yang's wife. Everything else down there is gonna be completely unchanged from when we left the place to sail off in a boat that got intercepted by Leviathan how many hours ago in the game? Again, this is a very old game that was initially designed for a very old cartridge that didn't have all that much space to work with. What they did manage to do, considering their limitations and lack of experience, was groundbreaking. Unfortunately, we live in a world where that ground has not only been already broken, people have gone deeper and explored the possible depths. So in a sense, this game has not aged all that well. That said, with the exception of the two MMO games, Final Fantasies 11 and 14, it feels like the series stopped really trying to innovate after the 12th entry in the main line series. It's honestly kind of funny how I respect the storytelling and the ideas they had behind Final Fantasy VIII, a game I've never been able to play to completion, far more than the story additions they've done to the Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's also astounding that I very much prefer this bare-bones story for Final Fantasy IV far more than whatever kind of derogatory descriptor you want to go for Final Fantasy XV's story. Well, milady, it's a little hard to come home when you're in a coma. So the way we're going to wake him up from that coma is smashing him in the cranium with a frying pan. Sorry, I'm not really a fan of that style of humor in general. Sure, slapstick can be funny when done well, but it's not like this game is going to be able to pull off the visual side of that kind of humor. It also feels a bit off, considering earlier in the game Rosa was bedridden as well, and we needed to grab a special tool to show her, since somehow the magical properties of seeing it would remove the desert sickness or whatever fancy disease she was stuck with at the time. But Yang gets no magical solution, just percussive maintenance. I'm sorry, but the man is in that condition because he fell into a lava pit while hugging a mystical nuclear device. Even if I didn't buy his death there, after all the false deaths we've seen over the course of the game, that does not mean I want his injuries to be treated like a joke. Especially since, regardless of if we smack him awake or not, he's not going to rejoin the party. His time in the front lines is done, just like Edward, the twins, and Tella. But notice how only one of those characters explicitly and undeniably died. I'm not saying to turn this game's story into a bloodbath, just that they overplayed the dramatic death thing while pulling the rug out from under us. The game spent its quota of drama very early on. Right, back to the lava-filled underworld and on the way back to the acid cave. Hopefully our third time inside that dungeon will be easier on us than the previous 2 times, so maybe that's just wishful thinking. The enemies in there are certainly pretty bullshit even compared to the other bonus dungeon.